You've now been at Facebook for 7 years, longer than most chief diversity officers have been anywhere. And now you're reporting directly to Sheryl Sandberg. How does that change the job for you?
You know, at Facebook, we had always approached diversity and inclusion with three pillars. How do we find and hire more diverse, underrepresented people? How do we grow and keep talent? And how do we integrate diverse perspectives into everything we do, building products, making policies, serving people? And so what has happened now with my reporting into Sheryl and then also being a member of Mark, our CEO's executive team, is putting inclusion at the center of everything we do, so that it's a push in and not a pull out, so that consistently we're looking at things through a lens of inclusion.
Now, you just released your latest diversity report, and you are making progress in some areas, but some numbers are pretty disappointing. Facebook hasn't increased Black representation in technical roles by a single percentage point since 2014, when you started putting out this report. What's going wrong there?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's really multifaceted, because in the same time period, what you'll have seen is that we've been able to increase women in technical roles from 15 to 24%. We've been able to increase women in non-technical roles to the point where they're the majority now at 58%. And even Black people in non-technical roles has moved from 2 to 9% in the same period. Hispanic to 11%. But in technical roles, Black and Hispanic people, these numbers have been stubborn to move. So we've taken this multi-pronged approach where we have short, medium, and long-term strategies to drive the representation. And representation is not just to say we have the numbers, right? The point is, the reason we want more representation there is because we want to build products that can serve this very diverse world. So for us, it's a top priority and one we've really invested in, and we're just gonna keep doing it. I mean, you know, we had a civil rights report come out recently, which they worked with us for 2 years. And the reason we invited them is because we wanted to get to excellence, right? You don't invite an audit in order to get accolades. You invite an audit to see where do we need to do better. And one of the things in the section on diversity and inclusion is that the auditors said, you know, you all have been innovative. And I think that's a good thing, because if we look at corporate America, we don't see as much progress as we should for as long as people have been working and investing in diversity and inclusion. And so we're trying to be innovative. We're doing a number of different strategies. Some of it is to be more consistent. When we do find things that work, we keep at it, we tweak, we enhance. And what we're hoping is that that will deliver more results, better results. And if we keep being innovative, we will perhaps discover things and be able to act on them to see more progress.
Meantime, you have civil rights leaders saying you're not doing enough to stop hate. You have advertisers who are boycotting. You have your own employees walking out because of how Facebook has handled President Trump's posts. Is Facebook's public reputation and brand right now making it more difficult for you to recruit diverse candidates?
You know, the interesting thing is that we also do not want any hate on our platform. Hate is not good for us. Most of the people who use, you know, the 3 billion people who use our platforms, they're doing it to connect with people that they love, to do things that they're interested in, and it's all goodness. And then at this scale, there is some hate. And we have every incentive to reduce that, and we have. So over this time, we've greatly reduced the amount of hate that people see before they even see it. You know, we've developed systems. We have thousands of people working at this. And again, this is an area that we're just going to keep, because it is in our interest for it to come down. So as you say, you know, it's in our interest for people to want to work here, to see the value. And so what we hope is that recruits will see how impactful the company is, how valuable it is in people's lives to connect with the people who they care about the most, and will come and help us to build the things. Human beings are complex characters. And like I said, most of our interactions together are positive. And then there are times where human beings interact with each other in a way that's not at all. And we want people to help us to reduce that.
So given all of the issues that Facebook is facing right now, I mean, do you worry that some of these reputation issues are going to impact your ability to make progress? I mean, we see you making progress on women, but you're not making progress in the Black community, at least in those technical roles.
You know, what I actually hope is that being transparent about where we need to make progress will help us to make more progress, because now we will be clear about the areas that we need to do better, and the people who want to help us do that will join, and the people who are already here, right? Because this is not just about bringing people in, it's about who's already in our workforce and how are they experiencing it and how are they able to contribute. So one of the things that has come out of both the civil rights audit and ongoing work we've been doing is that we're now really looking at how we structure more opportunities for people inside the company to have more voice in what we do. Those are incredible opportunities for people at, given what we do in the world and the impact it has. And so while there are challenges, I think being transparent about them will in fact help us make more progress.
In the civil rights audit, the auditors say that they are deeply concerned with how Facebook has handled President Trump's posts. You have a president who has threatened violence on the American people, specifically protesters in the Black Lives Matter movement. Now that you are at the executive table with Mark Zuckerberg, you're reporting directly to Sheryl. What is your voice in the room saying about how they should handle these issues?
Yeah, I mean, we have a really robust content policy team that does most of the evaluations and then escalate things. Being in the room means, look, I come from a background where I'm a lawyer whose majority of my practice was representing trade unions. I ran a human rights organization. My training, like the training of most people in the diversity and inclusion field, is looking at the marginalized people at the center, right? Most of the times, that's why you have the word marginalized. They're at the margins. But for us, they're the center. And so looking at things from that lens allows us to bring a different perspective. So me being in the room allows us to have a different perspective to consider. Right? How are these things going to impact these groups that are vulnerable? So we have a very sort of collaborative, robust debate culture. And me being there at all times, consistently in all the meetings, helps us to have that not just on an ad hoc basis, but on an ongoing basis, looking from the POV, from the point of view of those that in some systems that are based on imbalances of power, usually have a detriment to these marginalized groups.
So what is that point of view? What is your point of view?
I mean, my point of view is that we have to be building and serving all people. And that means that we have to be focused and conscious on where we draw lines and how we enforce things. And when you do it at scale, right, it's going to be difficult. So there are so many, and again, the majority of cases don't even require this much investment, right? The majority of cases are quite clear. And then when you come to the edge cases, what you have and what I think my responsibility is to add a voice there, to be looking at things from different points of view. And then we consider, even within that room, even within that group, we will consider all perspectives. But we have robust policies, and those policies are very clear against hate. So we stick to those, we enforce against those, and we may have a debate about whether something falls inside or outside of that. And that is where it's important to have different perspectives.
The critics say that this is a failure of leadership. And I know that Mark and Sheryl repeatedly say these things are important to them, but are they important enough to them? Are they making diversity enough of a priority?
Absolutely, 100%.
Where's the proof?
Oh, and the proof is in the investment. Absolutely. Look, I'm like 117 years old. So I've worked in a lot of places. I've worked in different industries, and I have never worked in a place where I've had this much leadership driving this. Leadership saying, we need to do even more. We need to do it faster. We need to do it better. Leadership saying, what are the resources that we need to do this? We will apply those. This is not a failure of leadership, a failure of what we would call buy-in, right? You would hear that term a lot in this space. Do we have buy-in from the top? We have the buy-in from the top. Absolutely. These are complex issues. And that is where you will see that even we ourselves get frustrated at not being able to make more progress. They're complex, they're networked, they involve a lot of how society has developed. And as you try to unpack that, it's just hard work. But it's work that we are committed to be doing for the long term.
Talk to me about that frustration, because there are so many issues happening about Facebook, outside of Facebook, that you can't necessarily control. And this has to be making your job harder as someone who has been working on this for 7 years and clearly wants to make progress and is in some areas, but not in others, which are very important.
Emily, I think when you go into this line of business, you know that it's going to be hard. You're probably going into it knowing that there'll never be a day that you plant a victory flag and say, mission accomplished. I've worked on criminal justice reform, death penalty issues, prison reform. None of these, as I said, workers' rights, right? None of these are things that you ever wake up one day and say, okay, we've done it, check that box. So yes, it is hard work, but it is such valuable work. So, when you go into this, you sort of go in with your eyes open and you're going to be keeping at it. And what you're looking for is progress. And there are many, many more people way before me who have done much more and carried much heavier burdens, who keep working at it, who keep pushing at it. And that's what we have to do. We want things to be better for more people in the world.
Mark Zuckerberg has been really out front on remote work, and Facebook is working to shift tens of thousands of employees potentially to work from home permanently. And I wonder if this could be an opportunity when it comes to making progress on diversity, because the talent can live or come from anywhere.
Absolutely. And we're hoping for that. And we're being deliberate about it, right? So it's not just a hope. We're designing it. And that's why we're being thoughtful about it, because we want to put inclusion at the center. We're hoping that the way we design it can unlock more talent in cities where before we might not have been as successful. It is quite an ask to ask somebody to move from their community, their family, their neighborhood, their church, all of the things that give us that sense of self and belonging and where we feel connected, to move from there in order to come and do the work that we would like them to do. So if we can go to them, we are hoping that can unlock much more diversity in terms of the people we're able to recruit and retain.
So you've set some really ambitious goals, and we've talked about these goals. The goal to increase representation of people of color by 30% in leadership by 2025, have more than half the company coming from underrepresented groups by 2024. What are you going to be doing differently this year based on what you've learned coming out of a pandemic with so much work happening from home to get you closer to those goals?
So there are two things we're going to have to do. One is we have to keep with the strategies that we've set around how we can be a more inclusive company, for instance. One of the things that we've learned since you and I spoke in the last year is how much the things that don't rise to the level of something somebody would report as a policy violation still deeply impact their experience at our company and indeed any company. And we've built specific things to address that. You want people to be able to raise issues that are like paper cuts, which one by one, they make people feel excluded and not want to be in a particular space. And we've built some strategies for that. For instance, a tool called Microphone, where people can surface microaggressions, and we can educate our entire population, and we can train people on how to do better in that realm. So that's one thing, like how can we be more inclusive? How can we be systematic about it and persistent in addressing those microaggressions that happen? That's going to impact our ability to retain talent. On the other hand, when we talk about moving to remote work, one of the things we're going to have to try to figure out is how do you be inclusive when people are not physically together? When some people may not, I've hired people since this pandemic, since we've been remote, who I've never physically met. They haven't met any of the other people in the team. It sort of challenges you to think and act inclusively in a different way. And it's new for us. So that's, stuff we're going to be learning and building and iterating on as we move forward in this new world.
Now, I imagine you're getting a ton of inquiries to join boards, as every Black executive with experience is right now. Where are you devoting your time and your attention?
In terms of the board space?
In terms of, the other things that are your priorities, essentially.
Okay, because I sit on the board of a public company, and that has been interesting to see how we conduct board meetings now again, that everybody's virtual and what inclusion means in that space, but maybe that's a topic for another conversation. I'm devoting my time to how we support our people at Facebook and the people who use our products. Trust me, that is a large enough set of things on my plate, in addition to being a mother myself, thinking about my children who have not been in a classroom for months and managing that. And then quite frankly, Emily, being a Black person in America, This has not been an easy time for us. While we have experienced persistently and lived with the fear and the vulnerabilities that that comes with, this has been an interesting moment, seeing other people wake up to that and the attention on it. And as hard as it is for everyone to see the videos which have surfaced of people who look like me and my sons being killed, living with it takes it a whole different level. So I'm quite engaged, let's just say that, just trying to stay alive, to stay engaged, to thrive, and to do what I want to do professionally, which is to make this a more equitable space for everyone.
How are you talking to your kids about race in this moment?
Oh, it is challenging because you're trying to balance being realistic with them with not making them afraid of people in the world. So we bake it into everything we do in the household. We don't have sort of conversations apart from them. We include them, but again, trying to say to them that people are generally good, but you do have to be wary. Unfortunately, we have to say to them, if you engage with law enforcement as Black boys, you probably need to be to take a particular posture if you want to come out of that alive. It is difficult. We have said to them, if you get lost, where you go for help, that's something that you sort of have to be conscious of. It is not easy. It's not easy because you want to do the balance because like most people, I think I want them to look to law enforcement as the people who help us keep safe, because they do. They do. It's again this issue of scale. It's interesting because we began our conversation there, right? Most people are good. And then you have some that aren't. And how do you navigate that space and that world? And how do your objective is to get it to 100% goodness, 100% no hate. Will you ever get there? Probably not. But will you keep working towards that? Absolutely. And so even with my children, I try to strike that balance.
So on that note, and this is my last question, do you think if Facebook is able to make more progress on diversity, to hire more Black workers, to hire more women, as you have been, do you think some of the decisions will be different? Do you think the product will be different? Because we know that the research shows that diverse teams produce better products, better results, make more money, and all of that. And I wonder if you think it will change the way that Facebook works.
It will change the way anywhere works. That is literally the whole game. That is why you do D&I. At least that's why we do D&I, is because we know that with different perspectives, you will do different things. It's all about, what do you have in that mix? What are the ingredients in there? And so what you want is to have it on every single team so that what we decide to do, how we decide to build it, how we roll it out, how we market it, all of that becomes different when you have different ingredients. Now, sometimes you might end up with the same outcome, of course, because it doesn't mean that the different voice is always the right voice. That's not the point. The point is to have considered. It reduces vulnerabilities and it increases the opportunity for developing things which connect with people when we consider the perspectives of all of the people. So absolutely, that's the game. That's why we're in it.